All right, good morning. Today is day 3 at AWFS 2021. We're here in booth 801. This is the Weinig Holz-Her booth. My name is Andy Turner, and this morning for our first live stream, we've invited Mr. Brett Hopper to join us. And Brett and I have been talking a little bit. Brett, if you don't know Brett, most people in our industry, especially if you've done any automation or if you've just been around Weinig for a while, you might know Brett Hopper. He's almost a legend in this industry. But Brett he manages the systems sales for our company. So and by that we mean when you buy, there are a lot of shops that would buy multiple pieces of equipment from Weinig, and we connect all the dots with automation in between it, and the whole thing, all the machines and all the automation around it become a system. And so Brett is, he's been busy this year.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we talk about it a lot with the state of our industry and how we're having the labor shortages. And, you know, there are different viewpoints on why we have the labor shortages, but the fact is we do have labor shortages. And talking with the companies here at the show, we've mentioned that what we felt was happening, that it's just being reinforced. A lot of small shops are really struggling to in some cases have to pay 3 times what they would have been paying a year and a half ago for general labor, and then they can't even guarantee that they're going to show up. They can't They can't be confident that that the new hires are going to keep coming. They might show up for a week, and then the next thing you know, they don't come back. So as that is happening more and more in our industry, Brett is getting more and more busy. You're getting busier and busier all the time, talking about systems and things like that. So, I mean, what are you hearing from your customers about this kind of thing?
Well, I mean, you said it pretty well. I mean, everybody has a labor problem. Yeah. Everybody, everywhere I go, we got plants running at 75% capacity simply because they can't get people to come to work. I hear stories about bigger companies hiring 100 people a month, and at the end of the month, they got fewer people than they started with. I mean, they show up, they don't show up. Nobody really wants to work, you know, and I think the people don't like the environment so much, you know, so the automation is really what's driving my workload right now.
Yeah. So I've been with Weinig for about 5 years now, not near as long as you have, but what I have seen in the last 5 years is that we have a division within the Weinig group called MHD, and that's just north of where our main office is in Mooresville. It's up closer to the Hickory area in North Carolina. And we build, that's where we build all the automation. And so what I have seen is that it used to be, or it seems that when I first got here in late 16, that we might have a really big project on the docket, right? It might be 5 million, it might be 10 million. They were big projects.
Right.
But it seems that we've seen a little bit of a shift in that, to where instead of having one $5 million project, one $10 million project, that we might have like 20 $1 and $2 million projects that are going on at the time, and they're going into smaller shops with fewer people.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of standard equipment sales, the motor feeders, the motor outfeeds, things that make the guys' jobs easier to try to keep that guy on the job. We're seeing a huge uptick in those types of machines. Again, smaller projects. Just trying to put automation around a standard piece of equipment.
Yeah, I mean, I had dinner earlier this week with a company, and I think they said they only had 18 employees.
Yeah.
And from only seeing that company on paper, I would have thought they were much larger because of the amount of equipment that they're buying. But they're able to compete with the much larger shops with 18 people just because they're automated.
Yep.
They can really fly through and do a ton of lumber in a day.
Right.
They were saying 65,000 feet a day or something they were going through.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really pumping it through there.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit. You know, we talk about shows. It's been a while since we've had a show.
Yeah.
The AWF show for us has typically been, it is the only show we have in the U.S. in this year, but it does tend to pull more people from the western part of the U.S.
Yep.
So it's kind of regional, but it's really big regional, because a lot of the people that are in the mountain and Pacific time zones don't always make the trip to Atlanta every other year. So this was a nice fit for that. But you know, in years past, we've had some big shows.
Yep.
For me anyway, it was tough to predict or to set any expectation on what this show might be, because it has been so long since we've had a show. And I think that my expectations, if I did have some, have been exceeded. You know, we've had a lot of people. There are people starting to come into the booth now. But let's talk about that some. What you've been to a lot of shows over
Yep.
the years. The last year and a half has been a time that we haven't seen before.
Yep.
You know, what were your expectations of the show? What's the reality of the show?
Well, I came out here thinking I was going to be really bored.
Yeah.
I was going to find me some corner to sit in and get my regular job done, you know.
Right.
But I have been really busy. We've had some good quality meetings, produced some layouts and calculations for some customers that we presented yesterday. It was a really good visit. Get a call here, a call there. I've been way busier than I ever expected I would be.
And I think that you're probably not alone. I think that's what
Yep.
everybody's saying, because that's what we're seeing.
Yep.
But it is interesting that at a show where, you know, you come to this show every other year.
Yep.
Always have. But at a show where normally maybe you don't have a lot of projects that are going on.
Right.
I think it goes back to those smaller shops that are now looking at these fairly automated systems.
Sure.
And a small 10 person shop, 20 person shop is ready to invest, you know, $1 million.
Sure.
Because they need to be a 40 person shop, but they can't find that extra 20 people.
Right. Right.
So if they can figure out a way to automate, and that also protects them in the future, to make sure if there are some dips in employment in the future, they can still be protected.
Sure. So if a guy buys a high-end piece of equipment, say a rip optimizing system and a high-end rip saw, all of a sudden instead of 3 or 4 people, he's got one guy who's doing that same work, getting more work done, getting better yields out. And at the same time, he's got one guy that he can focus on keeping as a primary employee,
Right.
taking care of him and making sure he's there and he shows up.
Let's talk a little more about that, because I think that that's also something I'm seeing. Rip optimizing in cabinet shops where maybe they weren't doing that before. So
Yep.
it's not even that we're improving what they were doing. Sometimes they weren't doing it, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
what are you hearing about that? And maybe explain first. Let's explain, just in case, explain a little bit about what rip optimizing is, and then why these cabinet shops are starting to do that.
Okay. So rip optimizing, our system measures the width, the length, and the shape of a board in its most basic form. And then we send that to a moving blade rip saw. There's a cut bill in the system these are the products I have to cut today to make my style and rail and my panels and all those, whatever I'm producing. I'd have to have these specific numbers of parts. So that goes to the rip saw. We move the fence, we move the blades, we rip the components that the people need. That goes out, whether it's panel stock or molding blanks or whatever. So you get the most out of that board, and you produce what you need at that moment to produce what you're doing in the shop. So the ability of some of our software applications to produce on demand, not cut the stock and pile up big piles of a whip that you got to account for and deal with. That's really the driving force is to rip on demand and make the products you want.
There you go.
So,
you don't have to have the inventory, right?
That's right.
So that's got to be attractive to some of these smaller shops
Sure.
that don't have space for the inventory, right?
Yeah, space or money. I mean, who's got a big pile? You got $2 million wrapped up in sticks leaning up against the wall, and you don't even know what's there.
Right, and if you can bring in the rough lumber from the sawmill, then it's going to save you some money too, because
Yep.
it's already gone through a system. It's already a S4S, for example. Then you're going to pay a premium for that product.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I mean, a lot of folks have been buying these parts out, and they realize that they're giving all this money to somebody else.
Right.
If I can buy this little package, I can bring it in-house, I got one guy doing this job, then all of a sudden it puts money in the guy's pocket, and he's not tied to a supplier who's going to cut him off or who's going to limit what he can buy from them or things
Everybody
like that.
wants a little more control over their processes. So this is a way they can do that. You move backward, right? So you become more vertically integrated, and you have control over more of the parts. These are, you know, in the wood industry, a big part of what we're doing in these kinds of systems would be in a cabinet shop. We're doing rails and stiles, doing blanks for stays for rails and stiles, doing face frame parts, things like that.
Yep.
So where they were buying, maybe they're buying parts that already were molded, or maybe they're buying their doors.
Yep.
You know, in an environment like this, I've gone to a lot of door shops that are so far behind, they can't supply the smaller shops with doors anymore. Or if they can, they're waiting 6 weeks, 8 weeks or actually some of them are going out 21. I mean, it's getting long, it's getting bad. Every level in manufacturing is lead times are going farther and farther out. So now they can have a little more control over that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. If you are at the show and you want to know more about how Brett and his team could help you automate some processes that could make you more efficient, help you to take more control over the entire manufacturing process that you've got, you absolutely should stop by. We're in booth 801. and Brett's going to be here. You see what he looks like. If you've heard the name before, now you've got a face to put with that name. Come by, spend some time with Brett, learn more about what Weinig can do as far as putting in a system that can make your life easier. From that, I think that's probably a good time. We got to get Brett back to work over here, and we'll be coming to you live several times during the day. If you want to make sure and get those alerts when we're going live, subscribe to our YouTube channel or like our Facebook page, and we're going to be you'll get automatic alerts letting you know that we're about to go live. So from that, we'll call it a